Okay, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this great session. I'm going to introduce our speaker, Kristen McCarter, relationship manager with the university and Walmart. So we are looking forward to hearing lots of good information, Kristen.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I know there's a lot going on and there are certainly plenty of other things that you could be doing. So appreciate you logging on. You'll learn that I'm pretty informal, so feel free to pepper in questions or comments throughout the presentation, and then hopefully we'll have some participation towards the end when we've got a little bit of a workshop. I will say that I am in presenter mode, so I can't see any chats or IMs. So if anything does pop up, would someone be able to clue me in so I'm not intentionally ignoring you, I promise. But really wanted to spend some time talking about a couple of different topics that will pertain to hopefully all of you in the next coming weeks as you attend career fairs and are talking with employers. Just a few tips and tricks as you go through the candidate process on what to expect and ways to get noticed. So got some resume and LinkedIn tips and advice, how to successfully network. It's a little different now in a virtual world, but we'll touch on virtual career fairs as well. How to prepare for interviews, hopefully when you get that offer, how to ask questions and maybe counter offer appropriately. And then just for kicks and giggles, I have some of the most frequently asked interview questions and the most cliche answers, and hopefully we'll work through some opportunities to answer in a better fashion. So moving right along, I've got 3 big tips for your resume and writing resumes. The format and the layout is very important. As a recruiter, I actually supported merchandising here at Walmart, and for a merchandising internship, we probably got over 1,000 applicants. And that's not even all of the students that were at career fairs. These are just students that straight up applied through the career portal. So that's a lot of resumes to go through in a short amount of time. So layout is really important for getting the key information noticed. You want your contact information readily available. Please make sure that you're including your phone number and your email. I know that seems a little obvious, but you would be surprised how often one of those 2 are left out on a resume. So make sure that it is easy to use. Again, unless you're like a computer graphic designer or something, just stick to black and white. But what you will want to really focus on is the white space on your resume. You want to utilize as much space as possible. So, you can play around with your margins. Don't have them so minuscule that you've got words coming off the page, but definitely play around with the 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch margin instead of a 1 inch. That'll definitely give you some more room to play around and put key information in. As I mentioned, recruiters will get a lot of resumes. And at first glance, I know this is going to sound like recruiters are a bunch of jerks, but they're really only going to spend about 15 to 20 seconds skimming that the first initial time to see if they want to go back and do a deeper dive into your resume. So again, the first things that I look for are contact information, graduation date, GPA. A lot of companies have GPA requirements. So I would say as long as you have a 3.0 or above, you would want to include that. If you don't have that on there, to me, my assumption is that it's below a 3.0. So I know a lot of folks that have maybe like a 3.3 or 3.2, they are told to leave it off. I would keep it on. And then we're also looking for past internships, work experiences, potentially if you don't have a lot of work experience yet, which is totally fine, definitely use that time to talk about classes that you've taken or maybe case studies that you've participated in things like that. We want to make sure that everything is organized in a very clear manner that as I'm skimming, I can pick up on the key facts. The third thing I would also say is make sure you're listing your experience in reverse chronological order. So most relevant at the top and then work your way back. If you have time, especially for career fairs where you know that there are certain companies that you want to make sure you get in front of, customize your resume to the job that you're applying for. You know, maybe pick 5 or 6 employers where if you know that you are looking at a merchandising internship, play up the supply chain and finance classes that you've taken, customize your summary statement or things like that to showcase the skills that they're looking for. And you can even put, you know, that your interest is in with Walmart on your resume or whatever company that is. And then I would also just have a stack of kind of general generic resumes that you can also give out. But you take the time to tailor it to the position that you are interested in, I guarantee you recruiters will take note of that. And then this is probably the biggest tip and probably the hardest when looking at your resume. You really want your resume to look like a list of accomplishments instead of a job description. So you don't ever want to use responsible for as a bullet followed by something that you did. So for example, you know, if you were working as a hostess at a restaurant, you know, instead of saying would, you know, responsible for seating candidate or receiving guests in a timely manner when entering the restaurant. Try and quantify that. You know, during a busy shift on a Saturday night, how many guests were coming in? How quickly were you flipping over tables? Things like that. Anytime you can quantify something, it shows that you were successful in what you did. Any questions around that?
No questions, but it is hard to do, isn't it?
It is. It's definitely very challenging. And if you want help with that, I'm sure the university has wonderful resources. I know that Walmart has attended some resume critiques in the past. I'll also make sure that you guys have my contact information. But if you can nail that last point, I promise your resume is going to go straight to the top. All right, then moving on into LinkedIn. How many of you guys have LinkedIn profiles that you actively use?
Why don't you go ahead and in the participants, you can even just either hit yes or no for this. Let's see. Couple of yeses coming, couple of no's.
Okay, all right. Well, something you may want to look into. It's definitely, you know, you guys have an awesome platform in Handshake that's very similar to LinkedIn. So I mean, I think Handshake might be a little bit more applicable for you guys as students now, but as you get into the professional world, you'll definitely start to utilize LinkedIn a whole lot more for your networking. Oh, I keep trying to minimize my videos and I keep scrolling through. Let me, okay, sorry. So one thing that you can do is put keywords and search terms into your skill set. So recruiters who pay for a LinkedIn license can search by skill set. So it helps you become a lot more discoverable if you have some of those keywords or qualifications for the types of roles that you're searching for. I would also recommend optimizing your headline, which is kind of like your objective statement or, you know, an opportunity for you to talk a little bit about yourself, and then have a professional photo in there as well. Try and avoid the bathroom selfies because they're a little obvious.
Our Career Center does headshots, and occasionally in the Honors College, we'll do headshots. Things a little off in turn because of the pandemic, but I bet the Career Center is still doing them right now.
Absolutely. There's also a way that you can build credibility within your profile by having your peers write recommendations on your profile, which is another great way to kind of toot your own horn without you having to do the tooting. So definitely would recommend, reaching out to a couple of folks for recommendations there. And then similar to your resume, so your LinkedIn profile is going to be a little bit more condensed than your full-on resume, but you definitely have the opportunity to list specific accomplishments that you have been recognized for, or things that you're really proud of. So similar to your resume, you definitely want to touch base on past experience. All right, so moving into some things that are probably a little more relevant for you now as students is networking. And get used to this, because this is never going to stop once you get your job. You can network for personal reasons, you can network for a new job or job change. It's just always great to build your network, because you never know what those connections are going to bring you, or how you're then able to help other people through your network too. So one of my biggest pieces of advice, and it was hard for me to learn this as a student, was if someone offers to help you with network opportunities, take them up on it. They didn't just throw that out there to throw that out there. They're genuinely interested in helping you. So take them up on that offer. Be purposeful in your networking. What are your goals? Is it to find a job? Is it to you just moved to a new area for an opportunity and you want to make friends inside of your social circle? There are plenty of reasons why you could be out there networking. So figure out what your goals are that you want to accomplish, and then tailor your networking to that. If you are at a career fair networking, like I mentioned during the resume tips, bring a couple generic copies of your resume. If you have business cards, feel free to pass those out. But basically just make it easy. And even LinkedIn has QR codes that you can share now. But basically just be ready to easily provide your contact information and information on you, about you, for the people that you're networking with. Give them a way to make sure that they can get in touch should they choose to. And then come prepared as you're going to some of these networking events with an agenda. Sometimes it's really easy to become introverted in situations like this, but jump out, get in there, and really figure out what your plan of attack is. Whether you're at a career fair, you want to hit those top 5 employers first, and then work your way through other opportunities to learn more. Or if you're at a networking mixer, maybe set a goal of, I'm going to shake hands and introduce myself with 15 new people. So figure out what your goals are and kind of have an idea of what you want to do prior to getting to the event, and then make sure that you're executing on those. So how does all of this work in a virtual world? I have attended a handful of virtual career fairs this semester so far, and each one has been completely different. I think with the platform that University of Arkansas has chosen, there's a lot of really nice things about it. And then, similar with every virtual career fair, there are some challenges too. So, how do you get ready for that career fair? Preparation is going to be key. Find out what recruiters are going to be there, look at job postings, figure out, again, kind of what companies you want to start chatting with first. You want to make sure that your resume is uploaded into your Easy Career Fair profile. Again, I know that sounds pretty obvious, but you would be surprised how many students don't have their resumes attached to their profile. And then with your research, if there are positions that you're already interested in applying for, go ahead and get that paperwork done. You're eventually going to have to apply for it anyway. But being able to IM someone and say, hey, I saw this posting, I've already applied, but here are some questions that I have, will be perfect. And then be ready to put yourself out there. Elevator pitches in the virtual world are pretty critical. Do you guys know what an elevator pitch is? Have you practiced that in any of? Okay, so your elevator pitch is basically a spiel about you that is the length it would take to get from the lobby all the way up to like the 10th floor in an elevator. So you get on the elevator, you meet an executive, you have 30, 45 seconds to give your spiel. So how do you get all of your objectives out in a timely manner that doesn't seem super aggressive or like you're talking 40 minutes a mile or 40 words a minute or in a clear and concise way, which clearly I just stumbled through that. So, you could start off by saying, hi, my name is Kristen. I am a current rising junior finance major. I spent last summer interning at Walmart within the campus recruiting program, and I'm really interested in learning about full-time opportunities in merchandising. Or, if it's a elevator pitch that's not necessarily for recruiting, what are your hobbies, or why is that person going to be interested in you? I will tell you that the #1 pet peeve of a recruiter at a career fair is coming up, shaking a recruiter's hand and saying, tell me what type of opportunities you have. Because at a career fair, and even in a virtual one, similar to the chat one that you guys will be attending here next week, we only have about 3 to 5 minutes to talk to a candidate. And me not knowing anything about you or what you're looking for, I could easily waste all of that quality time telling you about opportunities that you're not even interested in. So help the recruiters tailor their message into things that are going to be more relevant for you. And then I would also say the caveat to all of this is be careful about putting yourself in a box. So it's really great that you have your goals and the ideas of where you want to work, but don't be so specific that you're talking a recruiter out of talking to you about another job. So, you can say, I saw this posting, I'm very interested in it, but also interested in learning about anything that has to do with finance or supply chain, because you don't know what you don't know. And there could be an opportunity that's absolutely perfect for you, but you said that you're only interested in this one program. So it's definitely a fine line between being too specific and then so specific that nothing is applicable. And then the other advice that I would have is use clear professional business communication when chatting with recruiters. Try and avoid emojis, abbreviations, still think of it as a work email. But then also, follow, to that degree, you can also follow the cadence of the recruiter or the person that you're talking with. So basically just take cues from those that you're talking with and then kind of adapt to those, because culture fit is something that's very important to employers when they're looking at interns. Is it going to be easy to work with? So start off professional. If they end up being more casual, you can certainly adapt to that, but definitely out of the gate, you want to make sure that you're avoiding emojis and abbreviations and you're not texting with your friends. And then also ask, as you're closing out the conversation with recruiters, what are the next steps? It's likely going to be, we're reviewing, we will be selecting candidates for interviews. It may be an assessment, but it's good to know what those expectations are so that if there's a deadline of when you need to apply, you're not missing that.
Kristen, is back to the elevator pitch, is there almost like a formula that they should follow? Like, should they say what their background is or what their interests are? Is there sort of a best practice in the student elevator pitch at these things?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. There are a couple of ways that you can approach an elevator pitch, and you can even Google, and there's plenty of great advice, and your career services might be able to help this too, but you should really have at least two versions. One is going to be a really short 30-second, just the facts. And then a maybe one that's a little bit longer, around a minute, where you can get into some of the things that maybe you're passionate about, maybe some personal information, things like that. And then rehearse it enough so that it's comfortable, but it doesn't sound scripted. Because here's the other thing is, if you walk up to someone, especially at a career fair, and just start going, that person that you're talking to may actually have some other questions or information or instructions for you to do first. And so, I've definitely had candidates in the past who have walked up, and our process is that you create a candidate profile through Yellow, if you're familiar with Yellow. And so that's typically our, hi, nice to meet you. Can you take a moment to fill out this information? While you're doing that, I'm looking at your resume, and then we can kind of have that start. But sometimes students would walk up, and I get it, guys. Career fairs are a lot. It's a lot of talking. You guys are nervous. We certainly understand that. Most of us remember what it was like to be in your shoes. We're not super scary, I promise that too. So don't be afraid to come up and talk to us. But I've definitely had students come up in the past and just like rush right in through it. And it's like, I can't even process anything because I'm still like, hey, here's an iPad, will you complete a profile? And then we end up having to like backtrack and do everything. So, again, take cues from the person that you're talking to. But it's good to have kind of that short condensed elevator pitch, and then something that's a little bit more robust. But again, keep it to about a minimum of or maximum of a minute. And then, that's when the conversation and the dialogue starts happening, where you can really kind of dive deeper into that. Anything else? All right. Okay, so you rocked the career fair, you got a call back, and now you got an interview scheduled. How do you prepare for that? There are two basic types of interview questions that are generally asked the most. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is mostly business students. We don't necessarily have a whole lot of tech in here, right?
We have a variety of students in here.
All right.
We have
so
healthcare students, engineers. The Honors College has all the colleges.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the two most common types of questions that are asked are behavioral and technical questions. So behavioral questions are usually the tell me about a time, because past performance usually is a good indicator of future performance. So questions like, tell me you were faced with a difficult situation, or tell me how you manage your school calendar and prioritize things like that. For behavioral-based questions, how you want to set up your answers is in the STAR format. Is anyone familiar with that? Okay, that's usually about, there's always a few yeses and then a lot of nos. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So take, for example, the question of, tell me about a time you had more to do in a time frame than you had. How did you approach things? So the situation or task is, well, it was my first week of class. I was also the rush for my sorority and having to go through recruitment. And I was also working part-time at a local restaurant. So that's the situation and the task. You want to spend enough time on that part to give the interviewer an idea of what was going on, that to take up the entire part of the answer. So just give them enough so that they've got a good understanding. Where you're really going to want to spend the meat of your answer on is the action and the results. So what did you do in that situation? Well, I sat down and created a calendar that had all of the commitments with deadlines that needed to be done. I then blocked out my calendar so that I knew when I was in class, when I was going to be working on this project, when I was meeting with my sorority, and basically all of the actions that you took. And then the part that is most often left out, but is the most important part of the answer, is the results of that. So how did that work out? At first it was slow to, really work, but then I made this shift and tweaked this. And then as a result, we had a successful rush recruitment. I was able to, still make all of my shifts and actually picked up a couple of extras. And then I was still also able to turn in both of my reports that were due that week and got an A on them. Things like that. So focusing on the actions and the results as you answer are the key pieces that recruiters and interviewers are really looking for. And a lot of companies have been trained in this interviewing tactic. So if they interrupt you and, redirect you, don't get nervous about that. They're just wanting to make sure that you are able to answer the question and that they have a good understanding of what you did. So don't think that being redirected is necessarily a negative thing at all. They're just helping you out there. Any questions on the STAR format?
All right. Quiet crew today.
That's okay. We're gonna get talking towards the end. And then the other type of questions are the technical ones. These are the ones that either you know or you don't know. It's to test the knowledge of things that you've learned in your class or previous work experience. It's maybe a coding challenge or a math formula or something in Excel, things like that. So a little less gray area, and it's either yes you know or no you don't. One thing that I would also recommend as you're preparing, you can Google top 100 interview questions, and this is going to sound super nerdy, but practice. Get a friend and interview each other over dinner one night, create flashcards. But make sure that you're using diverse examples in your questions so that you're not going back to the same story over and over again. In fact, at Walmart, we would usually, if someone kind of went back to repeat the same example, we would ask them if they would have another one. So be diverse in having a couple of stories kind of in the back of your head of things that you're really proud of, things that worked really well, and maybe some examples of things that didn't go so well. And you can draw, it's okay. We understand that you guys clearly do not have 10, 15 plus years of work experience, right? We get that. We don't expect that. So feel free to draw from, if you've got class projects that you've been working in, maybe leadership roles in student organizations. All of those types of things you can pull and draw experience from. So it doesn't always have to be, well, my internship last summer. And then, as I would say, as you are practicing those, again, you don't want to sound so canned and rehearse. You really want to say authentic to who you are. So don't over practice in the sense that you start to sound robotic. And then one of the other things is towards the end of the interview, they will typically turn the tables around and ask you if you have any questions. This is a test to see how well you have prepared for your interview. So be prepared, think of some thoughtful questions. We'll discuss a few examples here towards the end, but then also as you're wrapping up, make sure you get their contact information so that you can follow up with a thank you note. At the very least, you want to send a thank you email out within 24 hours of your interview. If I don't recommend everyone and also doesn't quite work out in this current state of virtual learning and virtual working. But if this is your dream job and you really want to go above and beyond to get noticed, one time as a recruiter, everyone likes getting mail, and everyone likes getting overnighted mail, because what could this possibly be? I got a thank you note overnighted to me at the office once from someone who had done an interview, and it was like, wow, okay, that's really awesome. They really want this job. So is that required? Absolutely not. But that was definitely one of the most memorable things that I've received from a campus candidate before too. So things to think about post remote working.
It's hard to
It
imagine.
might be a little creepy if you overnight something to their home. I don't recommend that.
Might be scary.
Yeah, definitely don't do that.
We have a question. Jessica asks, what is an example of a good, thoughtful question?
Yeah, so I don't want to give it away because that's one of the interview questions we're going to talk about in the end, but I will say that a hint to that would be, there's a couple of things that you can draw from. One is what's going on with the company as a whole. If it's a company like Walmart or Tyson or Johnson & Johnson and kind of those big names, there's usually always something going on in the news. So you can draw from that. If this is maybe a smaller company that doesn't have a whole lot of press releases and maybe big initiatives going on, draw to questions about the role. Not always, well, tell me what you really like about your job. That is a question, but I think we can all do better. What does the training or onboarding look like for this role? How will I be evaluated? Questions like that are tailored to the specific position that you're interviewing for are also kind of an easy way to get the dialogue rolling and ask questions. Or you could, I'm totally gonna give it away for later, but if there are things that you're learning in class that you're really passionate about, ask them how they're implementing that into their company culture. It could be something like sustainability. I think this is the example that I use. What are some things that you're doing as a company to combat, trucking emissions or things like that? All right. So then moving along, you rocked the interview too, and congratulations, you got an offer. So now what? First and foremost, say thank you. And we're really excited for you too. This is awesome. My outlook as a recruiter was always really exciting, extending offers. And it's not always, you have to accept it because we were gracious enough to give you an offer. You guys are at a really pivotal stage in your life where it's not the end of the world or, going to set you on a certain path that you have to stay on for the rest of your life. But coming out of college, your first job is important. And you've got a lot of options on your plate, and how you navigate and choose which way you're going to go is a big decision. So we're really excited that we are extending you this offer, and we hope that you are too. So you've said thank you. You've talked to the recruiter about offer details. You've got your salary information, and you want to try and negotiate. My advice is to say that asking is always free. You can always ask, but go about it in a professional manner instead of just saying, well, I think I should be paid this instead of what you're offering. What's going to help us be able to negotiate on your behalf with hiring managers and business partners is the reasoning why. So if you're able to say, thank you for this offer, I'm really excited. I did receive another offer from company X and the compensation is a little bit higher. Is there anything that you could do to match? That's perfectly acceptable. But again, just kind of coming in and saying, well, I really think that I should be making $15,000 more is probably not going to get you there. The other thing that I would also say as you're evaluating offers is that base pay isn't always everything. You really want to make sure that you're looking at total compensation. You likely may have a couple of different types of bonuses in with your total comp. You may have relocation, or you could negotiate things like extra vacation days. So it's not always about that direct base pay. A lot of companies may be held to that certain package as far as base pay, but could flex on other areas. And then some companies might just come back and say, unfortunately not, the offer doesn't have room for negotiations. And you also, have to be respectful of that too. You can always decline the offer, but just know that, that potentially is an offer too, is that they won't be able to flex. But asking is always free. And if you go about it in the right way, recruiters will always be willing to kind of have that conversation and negotiate from you. The other thing that I would say is also really important and sometimes sounds counterintuitive, but be upfront with your recruiter on if you have other offers. This is really important. Even if you just interviewed and you haven't received an offer yet from that company. We don't know what we don't know. And knowing that you have an offer from another company where your deadline is in 2 weeks allows us to try and make sure that we can get you through the candidate process and keep you moving through the pipeline so that you do have all of your offers on the table and can make those decisions all together instead of, missing out on one opportunity because you had a deadline that was coming up too fast, or because the company didn't know that you had another offer and they were too slow to offer. So recruiters are constantly talking to candidates about other opportunities too, and that's okay to share. Honestly, it's encouraged and is really helpful for recruiters. And then it also just gives you as many options as there are possible for you. So as you're making those big decisions, you can kind of look at the big picture instead of segmented pieces. Any questions around offer etiquette? I know that's always usually the scariest topic, is to go back to an employer and try and negotiate. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to force some audience participation here. We've got some of those most commonly asked questions and some of the most cliche answers. So we're going to try and, as a group, come up with some better responses and examples that you guys could use either at your career fair or in your future interviews. So if everyone, I think maybe it makes sense to unmute at this point, and then everyone just kind of chime in if that works.
All right.
Okay. All right. So the first question out of the gate is, what do you know about our company? And the answer that you should not respond with is, not much. I was hoping you could tell me. What are some other options? And if it's easier to think of this in regards to Walmart or just any other random company, just throw out your answers and we'll see how they match up on the next slide.
Well, if you're applying to this job, I would hope you would research a little bit so you would have some background information. So let's say I was doing something with Walmart, I would be like, I know that a big part of your business is the supermarkets and doing the food line and selling. But what other type of businesses do you guys do apart from just the big stores?
Absolutely. And I think that this question, definitely gets asked in interviews, but will also likely get asked during the career fair too. And that's usually like my first go-to weed them out question. If they don't do this answer really well, usually it's, here's a flyer, you can do your research and come back when you know a little bit more. Any others have better answers for either at a career fair setting or an interview that they want to throw out?
I feel like if you don't know anything about it, like a better way to word it would be like, you're excited, I'm excited to learn about different opportunities like within the company. I feel like, once you get like a job, it's going to be different than just as a consumer necessarily. So like you still have more to learn even when you do research.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No one's going to expect you to be able to regurgitate the P&L or the earnings statement. But, and if you don't know a lot about a company, talk about how the company relates to you. So, I grew up shopping at Walmart. We had one, down the street, or, I grew up in, this isn't true, I'm just using this as an example, but like, I grew up in rural Indiana where Walmart was the only store around for, a 20-mile radius, and we really depended on it and appreciated and, can draw on that. So it's not always, you have to be able to, regurgitate a 15-minute spiel on everything that you know about Walmart. And so, like I said, you don't have to spend hours researching a company. 10 to 15 minutes of Googling should give you plenty of material. And you can draw on, things that you're passionate about and, a company is doing. You can talk about things that recently happened in the news, or you can, even draw on your network and, people that interned there in the past or accepted a role and are going to be starting, and just based on your conversations with them, you can tell that the company is a place that you could really see yourself growing. There are plenty of ways to answer that question for sure that are better than I don't know. All right, next up, why would you excel at this job? Do not say, I like working with people. And a lot of you may say, well, what's wrong with that answer? It's a little basic. And if that is your answer, there's ways that we can customize this a little bit further. So what could be a better response to that question? Oh, Cheyenne, you are muted. I see your lips moving, but.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was going to say, I would say that, like, the best part about a job is one that challenges you. So even though it might be in your area of interest, but if it challenges you, that's going to make you a better employee because you're going to try harder. And then also what I can bring to the table as well, just whatever my skill set is that correlates with the job.
Yeah, exactly. So just saying that you like working with people, most people like working with people. It's okay if you don't like working with people, but that answer isn't necessarily going to set you apart from the crowd. Instead, think about the core message of what you're trying to convey to the employer and why your skill set matches that. So, you could say, it sounds like in this role, you need a lot of analytical rigor. In my previous internship, I got a lot of experience doing that through running these weekly reports, or I created a dashboard, or, draw on your experience. And it allows you to be a little bit more specific. And similar to, how we were talking about the STAR method, this allows you to kind of talk about those actions and the results that happened through your knowledge and skill set. Or, if you wanted to draw on a non-work experience, you could say, my senior capstone class, I spent the majority of the semester learning about lean supply chain. And some of and I'm totally not a supply chain major, so don't hold me for this because I would bomb this interview question if that was for me. But, I think that I could easily translate these principles into this role. All right, next question is, what is your biggest weakness? Do not say, well, I'm just a perfectionist. What other options could we throw out there?
I mean, you could say, I'm not good at doing this skill, but I'm hoping to gain that skill through working with you in this internship.
Yep, yeah. Yep. Any other ideas? Okay, so this is a tricky question because one, you don't want to talk an employer out of giving you an opportunity, right? So you don't want to say something so bad that they're like, ooh, we don't want to consider them anymore. But I would also say that everyone hates this question, even the person that's asking the question. I think the biggest thing here with questions like this, and they may be tweaked so that it's not exactly, what's your biggest weakness, but one of the questions that I used at a previous company was, tell me about a mistake that you made. And if you could go back and do it differently, what would you have done? So there's ways to tailor this. And I'll tell you, oh my gosh, I was traumatized after this question because one candidate that I was talking to grew up on a farm. And I'm going down on a tangent here, but basically there were animals that died because of her mistake. And I was like, okay, this was not how you were supposed to answer this question because I can't handle the answer right now. So there's definitely a right and a very wrong way on how to answer this question. So you can talk about mistakes that you've made, or the things that you've noticed that were going wrong and how you were able to pivot. But the most important thing in this is that you also want to remain genuine. So saying that I'm a perfectionist and spend too much time working, everyone's going to kind of eye roll a little bit at that answer. So this is where you can describe an issue, or Jessica, I think it was you that mentioned this. You could talk about an area that you are trying to gain more knowledge on. And you can do it in a way that doesn't talk you out of a job. So, one answer could be, in my college career as a communications major, I didn't have a whole lot of analytical classes. So, but I knew that in a lot of the roles that I'm interested in applying for and in future positions, I will be required to have that skill set. So my senior year, I made sure to take a few electives and I was able to gain some knowledge in that skill set and, plan to bring that to a job in this way. Or this was actually one of my answers in an interview that I had, was about what's your biggest weakness. And when I get really passionate about something, and I'm from the North and I get told I talk too fast a lot, but when I get really passionate about something, I tend to talk really fast, which is challenging when I'm presenting to an audience. So I've really had to make sure that I've learned to slow down, take deep breaths, collect my thoughts so that I can get everything out in a clear and concise manner. Again, take that flaw and talk about how you've worked to improve it or negate it through other strengths. Any questions around this one? Anyone else have any other ideas on how they could answer it now that we've kind of talked through it a little bit more?
I would like to add something. I just had a question, kind of.
Yeah.
What if we talk about something that has nothing to do with the job profile, like the job you're applying? So
sorry, I had a little bit of a hard time hearing that. Could you repeat?
Yeah. So what if I mention something that has nothing to do with what the job is for? So even if it's like bad, they wouldn't care because it's not related to this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, you don't want to answer something in a way that's unrelatable to the job. I could say, well, my 3-point shot really sucks. And yeah, they might laugh at that because I'm talking about basketball or something. But, ideally they are looking for how you overcome challenges as it would come up in the workplace. So I would try and tailor it to the position. Now, you could say, I'm just trying to think of an example, I'm trying to think of an unrelated example that you could appropriately use. Nothing really, I can't think of anything that comes to mind, but I might follow up with you if something pops in my head, okay? All right, so I think we've got a couple more here. What are your long-term goals? I don't recommend saying, I want to move up in the company, get lots of promotions, and have direct reports. What are some things that we could say instead?
you can maybe talk about the sort of experiences and opportunities you can get through doing the job, even if it's temporary in your mindset, just like what you can gain from it and what you hope to do with that, of what you learned later on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Any other ideas?
I think it'd be good to have like a time frame in mind, like within the next how many ever years I'd like to accomplish this goal, whatever it is.
Yeah. So when you think about goals, there's a couple of things that you should build into your goal. So one is obviously what you want to accomplish. That's probably the easiest part. The other two things that you want to make sure that you've got built into your goals is a time frame. When do you expect to have this accomplished by? And then a way to measure that. And you know, sometimes it's as easy as check, done it. Like I've graduated college, I've got my diploma, done. But then, you know, sometimes it's, you know, how do I learn a new skill set? And is it, you know, I know that I've mastered this because I've completed a certification or because I'm able to, you know, create this new dashboard for work, or, you know, whatever it is that is going to tell you, yes, I have accomplished this goal. And you can have long-term goals and you can have short-term goals. And then you can also have professional goals as well as personal. And so it's not a bad thing to throw in some personal goals. Obviously, you don't want things to be too personal, or things like, well, I really want to get married in the next year or something like that. But, you know, particularly if there are ways that you can make a goal both professional and personal, I think that's a great opportunity to showcase a little bit of who you are as an individual in a professional setting. So as you're thinking of goals, think beyond the paycheck. Yeah, we all want promotions. We all want raises. But how do we go about getting them? That's what they're really kind of hoping to look for in your answer here. So you can say, one of my long-term objectives is to become a buyer or manager a category. I know that in order to do this, I'll need this skill set, and hoping to expand upon this. Or here's an example of one of those personal and professional skill sets intersecting is, I'd like to learn another new language in the next 3 years. Because if you're a buyer for Walmart, there's potentially some international travel depending on what category you're in. So, you know, if you're in apparel or electronics, you might be working with vendors and suppliers in China. Or if you're, you know, on the produce side, you could be working with farmers in Latin America. And, you know, knowing another language is really going to help you in that role. Or you could say, you know, again, since I know the use of data in this role is needed to make critical decisions, I'd love to learn about coding or expanding my Excel skills so that I can create some of my own dashboards and programs. All of those are types of answers that give you a little bit more credibility and still show that you want the promotions and the direct reports and stuff like that that everyone else wants too. Any questions or thoughts around this one? All right, so we've got about 6 minutes left, and I think this is the last question. So do you have any questions for me? And I know we kind of talked about this one a little bit. So anyone want to try giving this one an answer and not saying not much? I was hoping you could tell me.
Am I like asking Walmart, like?
Yeah, so at the end of an interview, they're usually going to flip it to you. So in this example, you know, you could pretend like you're interviewing with Walmart, or you could pretend like you're interviewing for a teaching position or whatever you're passionate about. This is all just role play. So Jessica, what's your dream job?
I am not sure about that, so.
Okay, that's fair too.
That's one of my weaknesses there.
Hey, not a weakness.
I was kind of thinking of asking like, besides, you know, what we know Walmart, what other fields can Walmart offer in terms of like positions maybe?
Yeah, you definitely can. This is another one of those somewhat sensitive questions though, where you don't want to talk yourself out of a job offer. So, you know, say you're interviewing for finance, but you start asking all of your follow-up questions about transportation or logistics. They're going to start to get to feel like you might not want finance, and instead, you know, are just trying to get your foot in the door. And then as soon as you can promote, you know, move somewhere else.
Can you also ask about, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you ask about like work environment? Like, are you gonna be working in an office or is it gonna be more like an outfield? And like,
That's a good question.
Like, how's the communication? How's the environment? Is it like toxic or is it like very friendly and open?
Yeah, there are a little bit friendlier words that we could use other than toxic. But
that's the first thing that came to my mind. Sorry.
You definitely want to know if it is toxic or not.
Yeah.
But the way to phrase that would be, you know, what's the company culture like? And company culture is really important, no matter where you go or where you're interviewing, because I mean, gosh, you're going to be spending at least 40 hours a week. It's a huge part of your life. And if you're not getting the balance that you need or the development that you need, that's not the place for you, right? So asking what company culture is definitely an appropriate question. I think someone else kind of started hopping in to say something else. Did they want to add anything?
That was me. I don't know if this is like a good answer or not, but my freshman year I had to before freshman year, in order to get a scholarship, I had an interview and they asked me that. And like, since I was like new to college, I just asked them what would be their biggest piece of advice, like going forward into college and stuff. And I mean, they seemed to respond well to it. So
yeah, for sure. That's definitely, I think in a workplace environment, you could tailor that a little bit to what's going to set, you know, someone up for success in this role. But absolutely, great question. And there's a couple of different directions that you could take this. So you could take it, you know, from a company lens perspective, again, going back to things that you've researched about them in the news. You can take it from here are things that I've learned in my class, and I'm curious about how to apply them in the real world. And then if you don't know a whole lot about the company or the position, you can talk about, what does development look like? One question that I always love hearing from candidates is, what are the sort of skills that you're currently missing from your team that you're hoping to fill within this role? Because, you know, on a team, everyone brings something different to the table, right? So Cheyenne, you may be able to rock out the PowerPoints, and Jessica, you know, you're the Excel guru. But maybe they really need someone who can do the presentations and be really lively in convincing in trying to get an executive to take a certain approach to something or something. So, you know, what are some tactical or behavioral skill sets that you're really looking to bring into this team? And then based on their answers, you can also follow up and use that as a final sell. So, you know, they can say, well, I'm really looking for someone who's able to create dashboards. And you're like, great, I would easily be able to come in and be set up for success for that, because I took this, you know, 400 level class and I can do this, this, and this within Excel. And so it's really a way to turn the conversation again back to you for some final selling. And that's pretty much everything that I had for you guys. Anything that we haven't discussed that's on your mind? I know we're at 4 o'clock, so if people have to hop off, I won't hold it against you, but I can stick around for the next couple minutes too.
Thank you so much, Kristen. That was fabulous. It's fabulous to hear from somebody in the field, right? And get some direct answers. Any last minute questions for Kristen? Anybody? Okay.
At the end of the day, I would just say, take a deep breath.
Can we have your email?
Yeah, absolutely. It is Kristin, Kristin, .McCarter, MCCARTER, at walmart.com. So first dot last name at Walmart.
I think I have it in the chat.
Perfect, yeah.
Kristen.mccarter at walmart.com. Yes.
So
All
I
right.
hope to see you guys at either the business or STEM career fair. Definitely shoot me an IM. Love to talk to you guys further, but if you guys have any questions about resumes, any of the topics that we talked about, I'm definitely happy to expand on those further in one-on-one conversations.